Thank you for making the time to join me this morning. I'm very happy to see all the young ones out there and their mummies. And yeah, I hope I'll be able to share something with you about the work that I do at a museum. I am what they call a curator. Okay, you want to share on your emoji? How many of you have heard about a curator? Have you heard the word curator before or the word curate? No. Yes. Oh, Deborah says yes. Brian says no. Curator. I have heard of it. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Alicia too has heard of it. Let's go into it then. And we'll start everybody with a quiz. Yeah. Okay. All right. So you guess what A, B, C, D, E, or F. There's so many choices here. Okay. A curator collects and takes care of many objects. So usually a lot of them are old, but they're full of history or they're important to different groups of people. Or B, when you see the word preservation or conservation, that means we protect all this old material, right? By putting them somewhere safe, like an archive or a library, all kind of storage. C, a curator, they present all these objects and things, right, to the members of the public because we want to share with them knowledge and we hope it's fun for people to come and see the exhibits. D, a curator gets to travel to many, many types of countries, or even within the country itself, like in Singapore, we go to many places to look for things and sometimes to rescue them because they are, like I said earlier, important to the country, to tell the story of the country or its peoples. E, collaborate. Collaborate means work with. We work with many, many different types of people, right? Whether they're artists, sometimes we work with even scientists, okay? And designers, and even children too, to put up exhibitions. And last but not least, F, we just make up stories with anything that we have in front of us. So what do you guys think the answer is? Okay, Brian and Ivy says C, presents all this important information and things for the people's enjoyment. A, collects and takes care. Okay. Another A. Okay, we have another A. We have 3 A's, 1 C. The answer is all of the above. So Miss Sabrina's got it. One answer. Yes, and this is really what, I'm not kidding you, this is what curators do. In many ways, they're like teachers, but they're like crazy scientists too. And they're like artists, because we really do have to take whatever is in front of us sometimes. Sometimes it's really just an old box, right? But somehow, for example, okay, this box, when I say a box, you look to the right-hand side, lower, my right, I hope it's the same as your right, but look at that bird. It's actually a box, right? And like, what can I tell about this story about just a box? It's in the shape of a bird, all right, but that's on the surface. So what a curator does then is to find out as much as possible that you can find about the object. And this bird is actually coming from the tin box itself comes from Borneo. Do you guys know where Borneo is? Borneo is in Malaysia. Part of it is in Malaysia, part of it is Indonesia. But this, okay, particular bird is an artistic representation of a hornbill. Do you guys know what a hornbill is? When you go to the bird park or the zoo, the one with the very colorful beak. Or if you eat Kellogg's Fruit Loops, yes, something like that. So hornbill. So we have that. And here it's made from brass, right? And if you, if you look, I don't know whether you guys can see on your side, parts of it are actually made of coins. And these coins came during a period where there was a white Raja, yes, of Sarawak. So from just this one bird, right? You get a whole history of the British who had arrived in Borneo and ruled it for a while. And then you also know that the hornbill is the national bird of Sarawak. So all these things, and it's actually just a very pretty object. And guess how old it is? It is over 100 years old. So that it looks so pretty still, that means somebody took really good care of it, right? And yes, so we hope to get this for our museum. So that's an example. So next, I have another question for you. So where do curators work? All right. A, B, C, D, E, O, F. A curator can be found working in museums. The picture up there. Okay. That is the National Museum of Singapore. I tried to use all Singapore examples here. B, art galleries. Okay. That's the National Gallery of Singapore. You can put up your hand. I can see you. You put your hand. Have you been to the National Gallery Singapore? See, there's a statue of a tiger in there. Okay, so, and they have actually, at the National Gallery, they have a children's art group. So maybe some of you have been there. See, libraries. Yes, many of you have gone to many libraries in Singapore, and that picture there is the National Library. So that's pretty fun. I love going to the library myself. I just must remember to return my library books on time. And D, universities. Okay. I didn't put up a picture of university, but you know it at school, right? And E, zoos. Yes, I miss going to the zoo. Yes, I have a little girl who is just turned 2 years old. She's not been to the zoo because of this pandemic. So I'm sad over that. And F, the botanical gardens. But that is not a picture of the botanical gardens, right? Who can tell me what's the picture of that one? What's that last picture?
Gardens by the Bay.
Yes, it's Gardens by the Bay. Yes, so, okay, now I have all these answers. I'm somebody goes, yes. Yes, many A's. Many A's. Somebody, but Brian Ivy say all of the above. Deborah says everything. Yes, all of the above, I guess. And you guys are right. Really. Of course, the giveaways are curators work in museums and art galleries, right? Because like I said, they put together different types of objects and images and paintings to tell a story, right? But then libraries also need curators, because a librarian is a type of curator too. They curate books. You see? So when you go to your children's section of the library, sometimes like, whoa, there's so many cool books here. That means somebody behind there in some room looks through, reads all the different, like, oh, this is good for 10-year-olds. This is good for 12-year-olds. I better make sure I get the whole Harry Potter series in many copies. So this is what, it's very important that the work that librarians do, because they decide what goes into a particular library. Okay, so have you been to many libraries? There's so many books. So there's definitely many librarians and many curators in that space. Same thing with universities. Next time, if you guys get to travel again, other than going to the very famous museums like the British Museum, for example, or the National Museum of any other country, try and check out the museums which are at universities. In Singapore, NUS also has their own museum, right? Maybe some of you have gone to the Lee Kong Chian Museum of Natural History, where they have so many stuffed animals. They call those taxidermy, right? Yes, but then we have all this, and even dinosaur bones. So we have that. So universities also have their museums, and they use all these objects, right, to do further research on. Because we have so many different people learning in the universities, right? Like biologists also, and conservators, and also, yes, historians. And they need access to all these types of documents from many, many years ago. All right, so that they can understand how things were like at a particular point in time, and also whether sometimes is what's happening now a repeat, or it's something that's been experienced before and we can take lessons from them. Can somebody tell me, why do you think a zoo needs a curator? To study the animals, okay, that's one way. Why you need curators there? To teach them English. Well, the zookeepers will give them the instructions, though maybe not always in English. Have you gone to a zoo and then you looked for an animal and it wasn't there? Like, what did you wish was in a zoo? Yes, the Singapore Zoo. If you've been to the Singapore Zoo, and there's so many animals in the Singapore Zoo, right? We've been told that it's one of the best in the world. So even though we're in a tropical country, we even have penguins, and at one point a polar bear. We have river safaris. There's so many types of zoos, even just in Singapore. But yes, okay. The reason, okay, so when you go to the zoo, you hear of zookeepers, etc. But yes, a zoo is also, a goblin shark, a megalodon. Okay, that's huge. If we had a megalodon, there'd be a lot of fish that would be eaten up. Yes, and then maybe a few lost hens. Saber-tooth, huh? A saber-tooth would also be very interesting, but I bet it'd be huge. Then it also eat anglerfish. I'm not a fish person, so I'm not very good with my fish. But maybe I want to see more giant koi. But then if the otters get loose, they might just eat all the fish. Then we'll all be in trouble again. Okay, the reason why zoos also need curators is actually, remember how cool the zoo in Singapore is? Because all the animals have like their own enclosures, right? And there's enough space for them to roam around, and for the lions and the caves for them to go in, the tigers, and for them to be at a height, and for the jaguars, they are the trees. Yes, surprisingly, it doesn't smell, the zoo, yes. So curators, in the sense, who work in zoos have to then have a lot of knowledge on animals and their habitats. All right. So while curators in museums and curators in art galleries must know a lot about art or a lot about history, yes, or maybe even cavemen, though I don't think cavemen exists anymore. We need to find actors to play cavemen. The curators in zoos, like I said, they must know the animal's habitat. They must know what they eat, right? So they will also work, like in my earlier example, we work with so many different peoples because everybody has their own expertise, their own knowledge, and they all come together, work together and collaborate so that they can bring all these animals from all around the world, but also be very careful that they are well taken care of. Correct. Yes, that's a good point. They might die if they don't have their habitat. That's true. So a lot of care. You must then choose the right plants, right? The water for a polar bear, for a penguin, has to be the right temperature. Yes. Yes, people eat a lot of strange things if you give them a chance. Okay? So, yes, so that's why, right? Yeah, so you work with veterinarians as well. Veterinarians. Even I can't pronounce that word very well. Vets, right? To make sure that when the animals are sick, that they are taken care of. So this is why, it takes so much effort and knowledge and care. You must love what you do to be a curator in a zoo. And last but not least, when I say botanical gardens, I mean really big parks, etc. Because for some of you, you might have gone camping in some natural reserves. Even you go up Bukit Timah, you just think it's a forest, but it's not. There are many curators. I put it in inverted commas because they have a special name there. Yes, to learn plants, correct? To learn plants and know what plants can live together without killing the other plant. Right? Because in your science lessons, you learn what some are parasites. poisonous, correct. Some are saprophytes, if I remember my science lessons correctly, right? Some, yes, they either live together in harmony, so symbiotic relationship, or then they eat off each other. And toxic, yes, correct. So they must learn what can live together, okay, and what smells nice too, to make it pretty. That's why the gardens by the bay, right? They must also know the conditions. Too much water, cannot water too much. You've also tried to raise a cactus, right? In general, people always drown cacti because they think, oh, we can take more water. So these kind of things you also have to learn. So all the curators in the garden, they are called arborists or horticulturalists. Okay, because they learn how to also make, yes, arborists, correct. Arborists are those who are tree experts. Horticulturalists, culture, horti, and you spell culture. Horticulturalists, yes. Yes. It's okay. My spelling is bad too, especially when you type. But that's where a spell check helps on Microsoft Word. Okay. So here, yes, this is why you can curate almost anything. So sometimes now when you look at the newspaper, right, you'll see a buffet is curated. A shop is curated. Okay. Because people are now very aware of how it takes a lot of things, design, you must take into account the product that you are selling, for example, or taking care of. So a menu, in a way, is curated because a chef decides what will be sold, what will be cooked in his restaurant for the day. Okay, so now I think you have a very good understanding of what curators do, right? Oh, let me do that. Yes, you are right. All of the above. You guys had it all correct. Good job. Okay, so this is where I work. Okay. Yes, it looks very old. It's like a museum of old things. And this was taken a picture in 1971. And this is near Bugis Junction. For those of you who like to go out with your parents to Bugis Village or Haji Lane on the weekends or even the weekdays. But yes, seriously, this is where I work. So that is an old picture. That was before I was born even. And this is what it is today. So it used to be someone's home. It was the home of the last Sultan of Singapore, Sultan Hussein Shah. Yes, it's near the Sultan Mosque, near Masjid Sultan. These are all the people that I work with. Okay, so they're young people, they're older people, that's me in the center, and we all have fun. Because working in a museum is never the same one day to the next. Okay. So this very quickly, I know this might be a bit heavy, so I'll skip through this very fast. But how is the Malay Heritage Center different from other museums, right? Very simply is because we have another 2 sister museums. So for those of you who have been to my sister museum, the Sun Yat-sen Nanyang Memorial Hall, which is at Ahud Road, that's in Balestier, and the Indian Heritage Center, okay, on Campbell Lane in Little India, we are all called heritage institutions. Okay, so we all open at different times. Okay, and what we do here is to really celebrate not just our Singaporean roots, but our own ethnic cultures as well as Singaporeans. So when you come here, you get to see a story of your various communities and learn about other communities as well, right? You can see 2 of us, Sun Yat-sen Nanyang Memorial Hall and MHC, we are in old historical buildings that are over 100 years old. And then you see the Indian Heritage Center at the very end there, and it's a spanking new, very modern building. So museums can come in a lot of shapes and sizes too, okay? Because there wasn't a historical building that the museum could be in. All right, so they opened theirs in 2015, and if you haven't gone there, you should go there too. It's a lot of fun. Okay, so when I said earlier we deal with history, this is how museums used to look like. Okay, so for some of maybe your grand uncles and your grandmas and granddads might remember the old Singapore Museum. There are so many animals stuffed inside there. All right, and then I remember too, there was the bones of a giant whale hanging inside the National Museum. Mm. What did they stuff it with? Okay, it's okay. Stuffed animals, sometimes when you see as if it's the real thing, right? It's called taxidermy. Taxi, like in taxi, and dermy, like dermatologist, DRMY, taxidermy. So what did they do is, okay, I apologize that over time it sounds really gross. After an animal dies, okay, or sometimes it's hunted for scientific reasons, many years ago, what they do is to preserve it, they will slowly make small incisions as if you're a surgeon, and then you remove all the innards, all the internal organs, and drain the blood out of it, of course, and then they stuff it. They stuff it with, well, they call it stuffing, but it's really a lot of inorganic material, okay, so that they will fill it up as if it's the real thing. And usually the bones are left behind when it's all right, but if not, they actually replace it with inorganic matter like metal. All right, so they stuff it in and they try to recreate how they would look like in the wild. Okay, so this is where a lot of natural history museums are like this. Okay, so this is how museums used to be, and how people now think it's so boring because it's just full of old things which are just stuck behind a glass frame usually. Okay, so and in many ways, many people go to museums to learn about different cultures, different places, different times in history, right? Because the past cannot happen, it already happened, right? And all you have now are little pictures, little things left behind for a particular period in time. Okay? So what curators do actually is make stories in all the galleries that you go in, right? We make stories. But sometimes, okay, and this is where it gets a bit complex, okay, but it's, you guys will be able to understand it. When you talk about yourself, sometimes it's different from the way other people talk about you or think about you, right? So museums first appeared in Western countries, and during a particular period in time. Have you heard about, colonial history, for example? All these Westerners travel on their age of discoveries to other parts of the globe and learn about the people who lived out here, right? But in that learning, and they want to share it with their own people back in their countries, they took things. Sometimes it is, like here, like animals, because these animals, like the tapir, like the little mouse deer, they don't exist in parts of Europe, like in Britain or in Amsterdam. So they bring this back there so they can go, whoa, these are the things I discovered when I went through the jungles of Kalimantan, okay, or Pahang, or they collect all these weapons, right, of the people here, or the clothing, and then they put it in museums in the West. But as you know, when people talk about you, sometimes they don't always get it right. Right? So at the heritage institutions and the museums that come out in this part of the world, we are trying to tell a more holistic story about ourselves. Okay? So in this way, it's like, sure, you might have some knowledge about us, but maybe that knowledge, and sometimes it becomes stereotypes, right? Like, Asians, they all only eat rice and eat with their hands. Or they are weird because they don't use fork and knife, they use chopsticks. So exotic, But that's only just part of the story of who we are. So in museums and at the heritage institutions, MHC, IHC, and Sun Yat-sen, we try to give a story from our perspective, right? So like when you tell a story about your family, it's from your perspective. If you tell a story about how you celebrate Chinese New Year, right? You can see how Chinese New Year is in a gallery, how it's presented. But when you celebrate it yourself, it might be a bit different. Every family has its own tradition. So at the HIs, and this is what each of us do, we also share the stories of families and all the different sub-ethnic groups. Sub-ethnic group means, for example, if you are Malay, you are also Javanese. You could be Bugis. You could be Boyanese. If you're Chinese, what is your dialect group? What does your grandma speak? Teochew. Okay, one. Any Hakkas out there? Because I like Hakka tanda tea rice. Yes, there's Hokkien too. See? So even within all the different, the big group of Chinese, the big group of Indians, all these.
You are Hakka.
Yeah, then you must ask your mommy to make tanda tea rice, right? So we have this. So each sub-ethnic group also have their own cultures, right? Practices when it comes to maybe marriage rituals or birthdays, or even the type of food that's served, right? That's why you have so many types of chicken rice. There's Hainanese chicken rice, which is separate from apparently standard chicken rice. And there's, Teochew Nyang tofu. Is supposedly very different from other types of Nyang tofu. So even satay, right? All of us say, yeah, satay. But if you go to Indonesia, they'll say satay Solo is different. Satay Java is different. Satay Madura is different. So yes, and prata. Yes, I can start a whole debate about prata too. So we have this, right? So people are very, feel it's very important, right? To not just share their culture, but also explain why it's not all the same, even for those within the groups. Okay? Yes. So that's why at the HIs, and even when I say this, all my other museums like the National Museum and even the Asian Civilization Museum, what we're all trying to do more now is to make museums more exciting by working with even more people, more diverse groups of people. So you see here, right? So we can help tell the story together. So a lot of experiments. One of the years, I worked with Givaudan. Givaudan is a very big perfume and flavor company, all right? And then we made different types of scents to capture all the smells which are in the garden, which is at MHC. So it was really fun working with scientists who made perfumes, and it's not just perfumes that make you smell nice. They even created a special perfume for one of our galleries that made it smell like a warung kopi. So like a kopitiam, but a Malay kopitiam. So it smells a bit different. Interestingly, because they say we tried to capture the smell of nasi lemak and kopi instead of roti and kaya. So it really smelled very interesting. Here to the left, you see a whole bunch of people in front of a toy shop, right? That is in Kampung Glam, where MHC is in. So we do a lot of treasure hunts around the precinct as well, so that our visitors, especially our younger visitors, can understand the importance of architecture and place. So sometimes work in the museum doesn't make you stay in the museum. You actually go out a lot. And the second picture here, see that's cool? Those are supposed to be actually flower monsters with one eye. We work with an artist, yes, who actually knitted it all out of yarn. And it was all over a museum. So this is our cinema museum, movie seats, but she had covered it all with yarn, with monster flowers with one eye. So that really made all the young children who came go squeal, but then after that, they still sat in the chair. So see, so it really wants to make the museum space inviting. And this is when we have performances, but we bring them out into the community. Some people, they might be a bit intimidated going into museums, right? Or might think, oh, museums are so boring. You know, what can I do there? I have to be quiet. I cannot eat. I cannot drink, cannot draw. I cannot touch anything. So because of that, sometimes the museum has to go out. Okay, so that's what we do. So just to share with you very quickly, these are the things that we cover in my small little boutique museum. Okay, my museum is not very big, so you can actually cover everything very quickly in one sitting, so you don't feel too tired after that. But here, you know, for your parents to know, we cover a lot of the episodes in Malay history in Singapore. So Perintis is our pioneers, okay? But as we learn about music, as well as how film, before there were film, there was stage acting, right? So this is how, you know, we learn a lot about how the Malay peoples in Singapore experience life in Singapore. As you see, some of our star artifacts. You see that drum in the center, right? Usually, what are drums made of? Can somebody tell me? Wood, that's true. Anything else? What helps make the sound? Paper. Okay, you're close. It has to be very, very strong paper or fabric. It comes from, I'll give you a clue. It comes from an animal. It's a part of an animal, usually, or the old type of drums.
Some sort of animal skin.
Animal skin, yes, so leather. So this part here, see the drum here? Okay, that drum, that's made from brass. Okay, brass and iron. Okay, cast iron. What makes the sound is actually the animal skin, or what we call parchment, stretch very tightly. And you see those little knobs around it? That's where you tie it down to hold it down. And when you hit it, that's where the sound comes from. And this drum was very, very important. It's called a nakara in Malay. And if you didn't have this drum, that means you're not the rightful sultan. If this drum doesn't sound on your installation, that means when you become king, people will call you a fake sultan. Because this was part of what we call the royal regalia. And this was supposed to belong to Sultan Hussein Shah. Okay, so this is from the early 19th century, and now it's the 21st century. So this is all 200 years old, and it's in my museum. Okay, an interesting thing, like for example, in the West, or what is the one thing you must wear so that people can see that you are a king or queen? Let me give you a clue. It's usually on your head. Let me see the chat. Did anybody answer me? A crown. Yes. So who fought for what? Who fight for the crown, or who fought for the drum? Oh, you wouldn't fight for the drum. It'll be inherited usually, unless somebody steals it from you, right? Yes. And the Dutch did steal a whole bunch of royal regalia. Yes, from Sultan Hussein's father earlier on. But that's a different story. It's a very long story, so we need more time for that. But going back, yes, in the West, they need a crown. In the Malay world, other than the drum, they would need a kris, a sword, to show the power of the Sultan. And if you look at the top left-hand corner there, those things that look like little eyes, that's what we call in Malay a pending, or in English, a belt buckle made from gold and with many precious stones on it. So the belt buckle is covering your belly button. And in the Malay cosmos, right, the belly button is a very important part of your body, which you must protect. So the belt buckle will cover the king's and queen's belly button, because that is the center of the body, the center of your world. Okay, so that's important to show, right, the history and the culture of the Malay Sultanate. Yes, and you see that thing that looks like a whole necklace below there? That actually was a present from the Sultan of Brunei to our very first president, Who is our very first president of Singapore?
Yusof Ishak.
Yes, Yusof Ishak. Woo! Don got it right. Okay, you want to see Yusof Ishak face? You look at all your money notes, okay? That's his face there. So this shows, right, that all the leaders of the countries know each other. So this was a mark of respect from one country's leader to the next. And yes, one last thing I want to show you. All right, that's the gun. That is from the Malay regiment who tried to protect Singapore from the Japanese at Bukit Chandu. Right, and this was found buried on the grounds of MHC. So we dug it up all the way back in 2003. Because if you guys remember the story, the soldiers never made it, right? The Japanese were too powerful and overran them. So the survivors, they sought refuge among the people in Kampung Glam itself, and they hid their uniforms and their guns, right? So the residents of Kampung Glam actually protected the soldiers from the Japanese. So these are very important. Like I said, at the very early part of my sharing, a lot of these objects are very important to the communities, but also to the country, because it tells the story of all the brave men and women, all right, who had also died in the protection of the country. So I'm going to skip all this. This I just wanted to share was my very first exhibition that I did when I was a lot younger in 2013. All right. And we do a lot of different things here. So we worked with, okay, students too, right? So this particular installation with the two mannequins here showed all the different traditional medicines, not just the Malay one, but the Indian Ayurvedic one and the traditional Chinese medicine, and also Greco-Muslim medicine, right? And all these polytechnic students, they're the ones who created the installation working together with us. So we are very proud of their work. And it actually also went to the public libraries as well as the botanic gardens. So a lot of our exhibitions travel. The plants that you see here, the botanic gardens sponsored them because they said it was very important for us to share the knowledge that plants can bring to our health as well. Okay, so it's so much fun. And see, who said you cannot eat at a museum? Okay, maybe not inside the museum, but on the grounds. So we also worked with the horticulturalists and the programmers, all these things that you can forage in the forest, right? Or even when you go to the market to find out that you can actually eat so many different parts of the banana as well. And we all cooked together and we went to Pulau Ubin together. So we've done so many things, right, over the years since then. So you can maybe guess how old I am by the number of exhibitions there are. And we work with communities too, right? And we are so happy when all these people welcome us into their homes and share the stories of their parents and their grandparents and even their own childhood with us, because it makes the story about Singapore a lot richer. Okay, so can I be a curator too? How many are excited now after what I shared with you? Who wants to be a curator? So, of course you can. The answer is of course you can. And like I said, for one thing, you have to be very, very curious and want to know more about a lot of things. Okay, so that's at the very heart of being a curator, is really the desire to want to learn more about the world around you, right? And to want to work with people, to want to meet people and find out from other people their knowledges too. All right, because a whole is bigger than the sum of its parts, right? So when you all come together and you share your ideas and you share your stories, right? Everybody brings a little something to the table, and you build on it and you build on it and you build on it, and then you come to something very magical, very special that hopefully you also get to present to the rest of the world. So thank you very much. This is what I would like to share with you guys today, and I hope that inspires you to go out and explore and check out other museums and parks and zoos and science centers, okay, with your family and your friends. Thank you very much, guys. I really enjoyed my sharing with you today. These are all the friends I work with at my museum.
Thank you, Suhaili.
Thank you,
So
Dawn.
good. Okay. I think there are some Q&A that Sabrina's supposed to facilitate, yeah?
Yeah, thank you very much. Suhaili was very, very informative and very interesting. So museums are really interesting places, not boring places, okay? Children? Okay, so let's have a short time for Q&A. You can unmute yourself or you can type in the chat. Okay, let's get some questions going.
Well, actually, I have a question. What kind of people make the worst curators?
Oh my, that is a very good question. Okay, I think it's less the worst kind of people rather than this is what a curator shouldn't be. Okay, a curator cannot panic because, okay, as the nature of a lot of things which are artistic, things can go wrong, right? If you're working with, like I mentioned to you earlier, you have those yarn, right? The yarn installation, and you have all these monsters come out, right? Sometimes when the suppliers come, oops, there's not enough of a type of yarn, or the wrong type of yarn is got sent, or there are not enough eyes to go around. Okay, so what a curator cannot do is basically lose your cool and panic and say, okay, I cannot do it now. So you have to have a flexibility of mind and to be cool as a cucumber. And this takes practice, okay? But yes, this positionally, what you're actually doing is you are solving problems all the time, right? So sometimes you're looking at, how can I make this better? Is usually what goes on in a lot of curators' brains. That's why you see a lot of the typical images of a curator is them adjusting something. Yes, and that drives a lot of other exhibition producers crazy. But that's just the nature of what you do, because what a curator does, okay, and designers too, what you're training is the eye, and what you're also trying to imagine is how do other people see it, right? So again, you cannot panic. So if you are a high anxiety person, it doesn't mean you cannot be a curator, but you have to train yourself to like Zen, and I can do this. Okay? So thank you for that question. Be as green and vomit like as a cucumber. I don't know whether a cucumber vomits though. Oh, that's a good question. Has anything ever been stolen from the museum? Okay. Not my museum, thank goodness. But yes, there have been many cases, if you Google it, of many attempts to steal from a museum. Even the Mona Lisa, people at the Louvre, right? People have tried to steal it. And definitely, if you have valuable items like jewels and crowns and other types of famous paintings, art thieves will try to steal them. Okay? So there's some which have never been recovered, places in Europe, etc., and some that have. So they're insured for millions and millions of dollars. And there's a lot of security. So I don't know, there's some movies out there, right? Like National Treasure or something. I'm not very good with, I only know Night at the Museum, so that's fine. I don't like to watch, movies where things get stolen from the museum. Scary for me. Okay, but yes, that's a good question. Oh, I have a question. From Adam and Hasanan. Do I have other jobs as being a curator? Before I was a curator, I was a teacher. Yes, I was a teacher and I taught history. Yes, but I taught history to older kids. So I taught in a junior college. I'm trained in history and in English literature, and I enjoyed teaching both. I stopped teaching because Not because I didn't like it, but because I felt I wasn't that much older than the students I was teaching. So the students I taught are between the age of 16 to 18, because there was also the integrated program. And at that time, I was all of 23. So yes, what did I know about the world to be teaching you guys? So after I finished my bond, I'm like, Lily, you have to be brave and you have to go out there and find out what it is that you can, love doing. So yes, what inspired me to be a curator? Museums. Okay, when I was in school, sometimes after school, while my other friends went to watch movies, I'm like, movies are cool, right? But for me, movies are very social. So I like going to museums. Okay, so when you're there, you can look at so many things. And I did mention to you, I saw the big, whale bone skeleton. And yes, that inspired me to try to be a curator. So after I left teaching, though, I actually applied to be a curator at then the Peranakan Museum, okay, when it was still about to be built. But I was still teaching then, so they couldn't wait. They wanted me to start the week after I interviewed. I'm like, no, I cannot abandon my students. But what happened then was, well, I got an offer from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So after I finished with Finnish, I got my students through A levels. I joined the Foreign Ministry, and that's where I was for almost 3 years. And I learned a lot. I cried a lot. I learned a lot, because that's like being in the army, just with other diplomats. Okay, but it was a really good learning experience for me, because that's when I learned not to panic, right? Yes. Because I saw all my older colleagues and my bosses, they were really cool as cucumber. So cold they were ice. So that was scary too. How much do I get each month? How much hugs? Is it phone calls, hugs, good posts, likes on Facebook? Is that what you mean, Adam? How much do I get each month? I get enough that I can own my own house, and I can get my baby gifts and books. Yes, I earn enough. Thank you very much. That yes, I am not sleeping in my museum. I have my own home. Okay. And is teaching history via curatorship more free than teaching history to students in a school? Okay. That is a very loaded question. No. No. In many ways, even when I was teaching, I was sharing a lot of information, a lot of knowledge of people who came before me, and trying to understand the world. So I love teaching my students. But of course, when you teach in a school, as much when you teach for knowledge, you teach for them to pass exams, right? And I had to make sure they pass their A levels, right? But I like to think that one of my greatest achievements was I had this overseas scholar from China, a Chinese scholar. He came in pure science, okay, but he decided to take history. And at the end of 2 years with me, he went on to Harvard to do history. And he sent me a card. But I'm so scared now because I think he's become a political dissident. So I hope he's okay. Because the one thing that he did tell me when he came back after a holiday in China was, I tried to tell them about the Tiananmen massacre, Miss Suhaili, and nobody believed me. And those who did told me to shut up, my friends. So that is, I think, the impact you have as a teacher. When you curate, the impact you don't see has immediately sometimes, even with teaching, for those of you who are familiar. But yes, you touch people in many different ways, right? They might not thank you, but then that knowledge gets shared and it might inspire them to do something else too. And it all adds on to everybody's knowledge. Okay. What is the most recent exhibition that you created, which you can go and visit at MAC? Okay, we just finished the exhibition. It closed in July. It was on the Orang Banja, but in December, there will be another one which are curated by my younger colleagues, and it's called Cerita. Cerita is Malay for stories, and it's about sharing a lot of the experiences and the objects from previous exhibitions. Okay, and you are very, very welcome to visit, and I hope to see you guys when you are there. Okay, so that happens if the restrictions don't kill anything. The 11th of December. Okay, and there's definitely something for children, as always, because we want to make the museum fun for you all. So thank you very much. Any other questions?
There is a question from Dawn.
Is the history of the Malay Museum strictly about Malay history or include art? Okay. Okay. Yeah, for the current permanent gallery, yes, it does talk about some of the aspects of identity in other parts of the archipelago. We actually had this cool installation called Of Monsoons and Movement, which is also done with Polytechnic students, and it has iPads all over a big map of the archipelago that would tell more information on the culture of the peoples living, like the Minang, Cabau people, the Javanese, of course, and the Bugis. But right now, because of COVID restrictions, it's closed. But hopefully, once it opens again, yeah, you are able to access it because there are cool map overs, also digital mappings on that installation. So hopefully we can put that up again. Yes, it's like the Little Ice Age. Yes, that's pretty cool too. Yes, I miss that thing being on. We spent a lot of time on it and we had so much fun doing it. So yes, but it also talks about, yeah, a lot of how the Malay community in Singapore came to be, which is, yeah, distinct from how Malays are in Malaysia, for example, or in Brunei. So this is where we are sharing with the rest of the world how we are same but different, right? There are similarities, but there are also differences. So also go to the Indian Heritage Center, go to Sun Yat-sen. You'll find so many amazing things that can help you learn more about how even children experience life here in Singapore at a particular point in time in the past. Okay. I hope you've enjoyed what I had to share with you today, right? And yeah, I look forward to each of you guys. Yes.
Thank
Curate it
you.
in small ways and big ways in the future.